Well, there was many of the neighborhoods in that home shortly before it went off. And these lovely ladies were some of the last ones that left. I was just kitty corner, and my sister Sonia over at the Valley House. But we have some memories of the Bazooka shell and what was happening even before it went off.
Because we all even touched it. Yeah.
We were helping to hold it to see if it could be unscrewed.
Yeah,
we took it outside and we were right out there with it.
There's a picture that Mrs. Harris put in a scrapbook. Cheryl and Jimmy Harris and a few other, I don't remember, maybe even Carmen, you might be looking at the house the day after you're standing there, it's all boarded up.
Yeah.
But I know Cheryl's in that picture.
I'm Sonia, and I was 9 at the time, so I have a 9-year-old memory. But I remember being in the home with all the people, and as a 9-year-old, the home was full of people. And I remember brother Don, scooping the powder out of the bazooka with a spoon. This is my memory again, Don would have to correct me. And he would put it in the fire. We had an old kitchen cook stove, and he had taken off the plate and he would put the powder in, and it would spark up. I remember the sparks coming up above the stove. And it was fascinating, I thought, to do that. And Don was babysitting me, and he told me that I needed to go take a nap. And I begged him to let me go over to the Becksteads because I was with Terry Beckstead. Don't remember why I wanted to go over, but he said, no, you need to take a nap. And finally, I bugged him enough that he let me run over to Terry's. So I left the house, and the Becksteads lived kitty corner to our house. And as soon as I put my feet on the porch, I heard the bang. And I turned around.
It wasn't a bang, it was a boom!
A boom. It was a boom. And I watched the roof go back on the house. I seen the daylight between the house and the roof, and then the big puffs of smoke. So I took off running home, and somebody grabbed me. And I remember just so flustered they wouldn't let me go to the house. And so we were kept away from it. They hauled us off to a neighbor's house, and we sat all afternoon not knowing what had happened until Karma came down that evening, and she let Joan and I was with the sister Joan, and Karma let us know who had been hurt.
Where did you spend the first night?
Faye's in-laws, our sister Faye, her in-laws came and got us, but it was after dark.
Oh.
So we sat there.
I thought maybe Grandma.
No, and I had been in the Groves home quite a bit because they had a girl my age, but that day the Groves were way too nice to me. So I knew that something was wrong. And then after dark, I couldn't tell you the time, but it was later. And I think, did they get you too and Bob? I don't know how you got down to Faye's. And then we spent, was it a week, 10 days at Faye's? And then we moved up into our grandmother's home.
Brother Bob, can we have what do you remember? Where's he at?
It's back there.
You can read mine on the Facebook page.
Oh, come on, Bob.
So if I can take a minute or two, I've been asked, where was Mom and Dad? Mom and Dad had went to Ogden to a funeral. So they weren't home. Brother Lynn was on a mission in Chile. Brother Craig was in Camp Pendleton getting ready to go to Vietnam. And Faye was living in Ogden on Quinn Street. Maybe just at the scene, you've seen a few pictures at the scene. So the people that's attending to us, is the doctor from the clinic up at the Valley School and a couple of nurses. When they came into the home, they didn't find vitals on me. Neighbors carried me out of the house. Peterson, Jackson, and I'm trying to think who else. They took me out behind the house, covered me over with a blanket. And then the person, Jackson, said there was nothing below my knees. They worked on Orville and Dawn, as you can see in the videos, and there was a lot of tender mercies that day. Maybe miracles. We were blessed to have doctors that had spent time in Korea in MASH units, so they knew how to deal with our injuries. There was just a lot of things. And the goodness of the people here in the Valley, but also other communities and throughout the U.S. So if I can just say a couple of things about gratitude, going back through Mom's scrapbooks, and she was a great scrapper, but found a few papers. So like Moss ambulance, they sent up 2 ambulances. Don and I rode in one, Orville in the other. There was a little note, I wish I would have brought it, the bill, but the bill, they said, we can't do much. But the bill for the ambulances was 0. And for the 2 ambulances, I think it was only like, if I remember right, less than $50. Mom received many, I think, articles and thank yous from people from around the country, just saying that their hearts and prayers went out to the family. So I just wanted you to know that we as a family are so thankful for what everybody in this community and family did for us. And this is Jim speaking, but life's been great. I've been able to do whatever I've wanted to do in life, and I've experienced so many great things, being able to function with prosthetics in the able-bodied world, and then function with people with disabilities in wheelchairs. I got involved in wheelchair sports. I went to my 50th year anniversary high school 4 or 5 years ago in this wheelchair with a stone shirt on and shorts. And then there was people that was dressed up like you're going to the prom or to a ball, right? But I had schoolmates come up and says, so you ended up in Vietnam? I said, no. I said, this happened when I was in junior high, and they didn't know. When I was in high school, I walked pretty dang good. Most people didn't know. In fact, I had neighbors when we moved from North Ogden to Layton, had neighbors for about 3 years that didn't know I was an amputee. So I've been blessed. I think we as a family, and I want to thank everybody that's here to come to support this. I had people ask, are you going to do another reunion? We did one 10 years ago, a 50th, and it was marvelous, the turnout. And I want to thank all of you for coming. And I left off Sister Faye, even though she wasn't in Huntsville at the time, but I think Sister Faye could give some information to us too that we don't know, if she would be willing.
One thing that I mean, you keep hearing and learning things all the time, you know.
And I want Don to speak too.
Oh, I was just gonna say,
Yeah,
I
go
think
ahead,
Cormac recently had told me that I was really hounding my parents that I wanted to go with them that day, you know, that I wanted to get out of there and something pretty bad.
More than once,
That, but
yes.
Cormac seems to remember that, you know, that maybe I was getting prompted, hey, but who knows?
Sister Faye.
So, my oldest son's birthday is just the day after. And we were at my husband's parents' home celebrating his birthday, and his great-grandfather's birthday the same day. And the phone rang, and they said, "Faye, it's for you." And so I said hello, and it was Mrs. Harrop. And she said, "Are you sitting down?" And I said, "No." I thought, why should I sit down? And she said, "You better sit down." So I did. And she told me that there had been an explosion in the home, and that the injured had been taken to the hospital. And she thought that I would like to know that. So that sparked the party ended for me. And Don, my husband, took us, we went to the hospital, and Mom and Dad was there waiting and not knowing the condition or what was going to happen. And then a police vehicle came, and I think it had you and Bob together, Karma, in it, yes. And he had some scrapes from flown stuff that had got him, and they took care of that. And then later that, early evening or that, it seemed like Joan and Sonia was brought down. And so during all that process into the night, wondering where the family was going to sleep, and so Don and I offered our home for the children. So, and then Hey, Jim, how Mom and Dad found out about it.
Yeah.
Okay. Mother and Dad had been to a funeral, a fellow that my father knew. And as they got to the mouth of Ogden Canyon, there was a police vehicle there. And I don't know if there was more than one or not. But Mother said to Dad, "We're going to stop us." And sure enough, they did. And that's how they found out that they were needed at the hospital and that there'd been an accident at the home.
So I have a question. So it was my understanding that they went to the funeral, but then they had to go pick up some meat for Chris's.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so what happened to the meat? The meat's in the car. What happened to the meat?
Carol's over there.
Carol
Maybe she
is
can
here.
tell us.
They ain't healthy.
I mean, did it make it back up? Did
That's
it?
why they did our house be
Sugar.
cooked with sugar
Yeah.
and homemade bread.
So, maybe one more thing of interest. So, my mother's scrapbooks, videos that you see on the little video we got, we have that all on a YouTube thing. If I could get my boy JJ to tell you where you can look, you can see the whole thing, scrapbooks, history, all of it. I had, who was it said, they were watching it last night and then they tried to get back on it and it didn't work. So JJ, can you help us out?
Okay. Let me just give the video for now. And all that other stuff, we'll talk about that. So let me put up a QR code here in just a second and just go right to the YouTube video. Yeah, QR code.
So maybe in the meantime, Brother Don, why are you standing?
He's sitting.
I know, but he can stand. If I can stand, Don can stand.
I still got legs under me. As opposed to when it blew up.
So we're gonna have to be quiet again for a minute.
So I was the closest to it when it blew up. It blew me right to the ceiling. And I come down. Probably where the wood stove was, and had fire burning in it. But when I regained consciousness, I was on my knees looking up, and I could see daylight with the roof coming back on the house. And then something hit me in the head and knocked me on my back, and the Orville was entangled with my legs, laying there. Yeah, and from there on, I was conscious till they got me to the hospital. Finally, all kinds of questions and that, and so much pain, they finally put me out. I remember 2 or 3 days later, first time I opened my eyes, and Brother Craig standing at my bedside. Mom, they'd brought him home from the Marine Corps. And from then on, it just seemed like a big nightmare. Yeah, the whole thing. So, and I was in the hospital probably for 3 months. Yeah, before they finally got me walking, get around. So, and after that, I was pretty healthy and strong. But
you still are, sweetheart.
but yeah, so any questions, yeah, lay it on us and we
Hey,
can
Don,
answer it.
Who actually found the grenade and
You know, Brother Jim and I hiked. We hiked. It's a whole other story, but we hiked up Bennett behind the monastery because they had their big heavy equipment, the military, up the road going in there, and it was so muddy that we hiked over from the monastery down where they had been firing the rounds. And Brother Jim pulled it out of the snow, the live round.
So it was on the north side of a tree, about 6 feet high at an angle, just the rocket part. So we found all these dummy rounds, practice rounds, right? They're light colored blue, and as a teenager, not being in the military, we didn't know what blue meant. But there was this one green rocket, just the rocket part, out of the snow, had to reach up really high to grab it, and it was a complete rocket. All the practice ones, they were all in pieces, because when they shot them and they hit the ground, they'd come apart, but you'd have the rocket part, the warhead, and that kind of thing. But this green one was all in one piece, solid.
and it was hanging from a tree?
No, in the snow, at an angle,
gotcha.
on the north side of a tree, to where the snow, the sun hadn't melted the snow. The military said they shot a second round at it, and they got a double explosion. So they thought, the National Guard units thought they were good. But when we were up there, Don, we found what? Smoke grenades, TNT, blasting caps, tracer bullets. They
We
did
had
so
it
much
all
stuff.
in a
And
gunny
we weren't
sack.
the only kids up there.
With that live round, I'd get tired and drop it on the ground.
Tell him how you got it
To
home.
hike back down to the monastery.
Can I say one more thing about the round? So, Brother Craig was in the Marine Corps, and we lost Craig 2 years ago, and Sister Joan is on a mission in Australia. So we're missing 2 siblings. But Brother Craig said when he was in the Marine Corps and fired them same particular rounds, if they had a misfire, you didn't touch them. Once they're shot through the tube at the target, the fire mechanism is set and they explode on impact. So usually just by touching them, picking them up, that explode. Craig said in the mess hall at Camp Pendleton, there was a big crater where you walk through to get the food, and he said they left it there because a soldier had picked up a round similar to what we had had it under his field jacket, walking through, and it fell, and I forget how many soldiers it fell. So maybe one other thing I could touch on too is, so we had our accident with 3 of us. There was an accident similar to ours in Missouri where they lost 3 family members similar to a round that we had. But that year with our accident and the accident in Missouri, Congress did a moratorium on that, no more going out on public ground, firing rounds like this. You had to go to a place like Camp Williams or some military range. So some good came out of it.
Well, Jim, I have one thing. You should, when you and Don brought it down, you need to tell him the story about the banging this shell went through.
So they said just the slightest touch would set it off, but we had a gunny sack with all the stuff that Don and I collected, and we dragged it over the fences and down through the monastery fields and back there where Minix lived by the monastery, and got our bikes, and it swayed. And even maybe one more dumb thing, one time Don wanted to shoot a 22 because it wouldn't come apart. So Don had it out in the woodpile behind the house, shot a 22, and guess who went and picked it up because nothing happened.
Jim, how long did you guys have it at the house then before?
I bet we had it around the house for a good month, don't you think, Don? And I don't know how many neighbors touched it, how many family members came in and touched it, and then the day that it went off, when all the 15, 17 kids left the house within 3 to 5 minutes.
Jay, didn't somebody try cutting on it too?
So you want me to?
You, Jim, you continue.
So earlier that morning, and I don't know if Mom and Dad had left to go to the funeral, but Donna took the shell out back because Don did his darndest to get that shell to come apart. But Don took it out into a hacksaw, or saw, with a hacksaw out behind the house, and Jim Harris and Jim Marinko, that were close neighbors, Don saw the warhead right in half with the hacksaw, and I think, I might be wrong, but Don, did it sputter a time or two while you did that?
It did.
So being right over it, it's just amazing how it panned out. And I hope y'all know we have a higher creator, there's a higher power out there watching over us. And I think the reason why Don, Orville, and I maybe came out with just the little injuries that we did, we had guardian angels.
Jim, tell him the story. You wasn't even supposed to live. For how long did Mom and Dad be told you wouldn't live?
Yeah. So Mom and Dad gets to the hospitals. They tell Mom and Dad that there's been an accident in the house. We got 3 of your boys here. They're in operating rooms now. Like I said, we were really fortunate. There's so many miracles that the doctors that attended to us had spent time in Korea, like in a MASH unit, so they knew how to work on our wounds. But when they came out of the operating that night, that Saturday night, and visited with Mom and Dad, they explained the injuries. They started with Don and says, we've saved his legs. We don't know if we're going to be able to save him. He's lost fingers, critical condition, got burns. We don't know about their sight, their hearing being that close. Then they got to Orville, lost one leg up to the hip. His right leg was completely shot off down below the calf out of it. We've saved his leg, other injuries. Got to me and with both limbs missing, and then I had internal injuries. They just told Mom and Dad, we don't expect the boys to make it through the night. And like I said, they said, we don't know about their sight. their hearing, being that close, we were burned. If you've seen the one video, they were shooting that soot. Am I saying it right? Soot. Thank you. Say it again. Yeah, that stuff. Out of the stove, you know, that was blowing around. So, Mom said she went to a little waiting room and got down on her knees, and she says she don't know how many times she prayed. But at the end, she finally said, Father, meaning Father in heaven, if it's meant to be, but we survived. Like Don said, the first thing I can remember too, waking up in the hospital. And can I just mention that growing up in a town like Huntsville and back in the 60s, I didn't know what a handicap was. Physically challenged. You didn't see it at all. I think, so my dad's cousin Carl, right, Chris's brother Carl, that's the only handicap I ever remember seeing as a youth. And pain, didn't know what pain was. It's just amazing how we all survived. I don't know. But the funny thing with all that is I healed was the first to heal and was out of the office. Orville and Don was still in the hospital. And now, Orville, did you spend all that time in the hospital before we went to Shriners?
I don't really ever remember staying at Grandma's, like, if I left, you know. That's what I was asking you. I was like, did they just come and all of a sudden just, you know, straight? I think our dad really didn't want us to go to Shriners, or because an aunt, I know it was an aunt that come and got me, and I wondered if we didn't go together.
I think on our day down to Shriners we did, and like I said, growing up as a youth, not knowing about handicaps or disabilities, you get to a place like Shriners Hospital, and yeah, we kind of had it bad, I think, in the D hospital, but you get to a place like Shriners, which is just like Primary's Children's, and then you see all these patients and all the problems. There was patients that came in from off farms, you know, where they got their clothing caught into power takeoff and the limbs ripped off. Or there's birth defects like I had never seen before, and just burn patients. And that was really eye-awakening, wasn't it, Orville? That's right.
Being in the Ogden Hospital, visitors could bring toys. I think the one picture where we were sitting in our wheelchairs, the one they put in the paper, I had a metal airplane. You know, we were seemed to me, getting treated really good. You know, I mean, shakes, treats, things that we never had at home. But Shriners, that was a whole different, because the kids were coming from, couldn't see their parents, you know, the parents could only come visit once, I think Sundays, once a week, they'd have a couple hours visitors maybe, and they didn't seem to want to spoil or, think that we were special or anything. But.
So, if anybody's got anything to say, please do. Yeah, Bob.
So I was only joking. Don't find me on Facebook.
I know. So, can I be up? Bob doesn't have a phone, and he'll probably kill me for saying that.
I'm on the phone all day. Don't let Jim mislead you. So, my story isn't as dramatic as theirs. Growing up with my three older brothers, I always felt like I was the handicap. Seeing what these guys have done and living with them, I mean, it's just been an honor and a privilege for me. I so look up to them. That day for me, I was 4. Maybe 4.5, and so I really don't even remember what the layout of the house was. But so it was nap time for me. I was behind the wood-burning stove sleeping with the cat, and my mom always, she'd referred to me more than once as a wandering Jew. And I am restless, so I don't remember getting up out of the nap. My first memories out, so I would have went around the brothers, I guess, and was at the front door trying to put on my rubber boots. From there, my next memory is across the street, heading east into Luke Allen's yard. And it was Luke and Rita Gay trying to catch me. I was really just serpentine running across the yard. Luke grabbed me. I remember Rita coming out with a blanket. From there, I remember being at the elementary school and them cleaning my back. I'd gotten some glass in my back. However, Bailey, when he retired out here at the library, they let him give a synopsis of his career. And he mentioned Bobby Peterson getting shrapnel in his head. I like his story better. I'm gonna go with that. It's like Kenton getting hit by lightning twice. Let the story grow. My sister Karma held me down the canyon. The sheriff that took us down there, I think he was Highway Patrol or Ogden Police. His name was Sergeant White. And he offered me a ride when I got better in his car, but I was just terrified of cops. I always have been. They're still pulling me over. But anyway, and I think the first night that Jamie had asked where I spent that first night, it would have been with my sister Faye, and I have some memory of Jell-O. Great memories for me. My brothers have taught me so much, and if I can share one thing in closing, we bought, they used to have the green stamp books, and we got some baseball mitts to them, and one of them was a first baseman mitt. Wilson or Spalding, I don't remember which, but it really had some reach. And so Orville had that one. I learned to play catch with my brother Orville on the front lawn. I'm left-handed, and our dad wasn't ever going to buy a left-handed mitt. And so I'd have to take my mitt off and try to figure out how to throw the ball. But Orville was so patient, because I'd have him hopping to try to catch my crappy throw. But he was patient enough that I still love to do that with anybody, anytime. I'll play catch with a baseball or a football. But I'd just like to close by how proud I am to be Uncle Bob, Brother Bob. I married up. I've got the greatest person on earth that really she's keeping an eye on me now. I'm still that wandering Jew. But just love everybody that's here. Just want you to know that, and I just so look up to these three great men.
And I think of that. Just admire you so much.
So in the pictures in the video, you see Howard Bailey, and you see Bob Wilcox, and you see Holmes and Beck, Beckstead, quite a few. But Lyle here, son of Howard, and Howard, you know, is a cousin to our family, the Petersons. And but Howard was great. Can I tell a story or two about your dad?
Well, sure. You know, he's dead.
I know. So, Brother Craig, that we don't have, maybe I shouldn't say it too loud, but he was always either hunting out of season, fishing out. Back then we had his time, we could fish is all. He was fishing out of season. But Howard would come to the house and say, B, or Orville, you know, Craig's been spotted by the Fish and Game, and they got his eye on him. Hopefully he makes it home safe.
I'll mention a couple things about Dad's Day leading up to this and my mother. So I'm Lyle Bailey. Anyway, on that particular day, I called Val Layton. You know Shirley Layton in town, the oldest resident, right? And Val's the oldest boy. I called him, and I says, Val, get up here. There's nobody here. Dad's on duty. Duck and Brad are gone. I'm the only one here. He says, no, I'm going to go help those Peterson boys cut up a bazooka shell, see what it looks like inside. Well, you know, I was a pretty good salesman back then. I knew that 40 no's meant maybe, and I was persistent. And I says, hey, I got a good idea. We can go up behind the state's fish pond, behind my Uncle Roy's, and ride Edgar Allan's Black Angus cows. We can rope them and ride them, and nobody will see us. And he says, okay, so we're up there riding these cows, and then all of a sudden I see Dad coming down the highway. He had to be going 120. That was the same speed he'd go when he'd have to stop and get to the bathroom in that patrol car. But anyway, we didn't think much of it. And then Val and I end up back at the house. I'll never forget, we'd taken a bowl of macaroni and cheese, or macaroni salad out of the fridge, and we were eating that. And my mother came in the door.
Sweet Lucy.
Yeah, Lucille. She was the postmaster here in town. Anyway, she was just covered with blood. It was a mess. It was the most bizarre thing we'd ever seen. And she said the first thing she did when she walked in the door, she seen you, Jimmy, and she said that you said, Lucille, lift my leg up. It hurts. And she lifted those blankets, and there were no legs. Tourniquets on both of them. So, I remember Dad talking about the sheetrock in the house pulverizing. And the sheetrock come down into those wounds and kept them from bleeding. Dad said, I think I would have lost Jimmy for sure, and maybe Orville. But it stopped the bleeding to a great degree. It was just a remarkable day. And I'll tell you something, this family is so phenomenal. They're second cousins, or second cousins to me. And I love them all. And I'm proud of you. 60 years later, here we are. And you're still good looking. That's what really blows me away. All you Petersons weather the storm better than some of the rest of us.
That and that's diet, maybe.
Oh yeah, he used to fry that watermelon, I know that.
So really quick, I'll just, my memories, the day of the explosion, I really don't remember watching Dawn, messing with it in the stove. I know I was probably in there. I don't remember if any of my friends, neighbor kids, were in there. But we seemed like we'd always have, all of us would have friends come over when our parents were gone. But when the thing exploded, sometimes it seems like I can see this big flash in my head. It's like, well, I wonder if that was, the flash I'm seeing or something. But I do remember waking up, and I can remember, like Dawn said, he was kind of laying over me, I think, and I think Dawn was maybe not as much shock or something, because it seemed to be like he was kind of cursing and stuff, like swearing, and I think Mrs. Beckstead was asking him, "Where's the scissors?" Trying to get so they could cut our clothes, and so I do remember hearing Dawn. And I didn't even remember that Jim, was in the house, or Bob. I don't have any memory like thinking, well, I wonder what Jim and Bob's up to. But, and then I remember that I did want to sit up. I was asking, well, can I sit up? And Mr. Beckstead, you can see, he's the one that was pretty much attending to me and in the pictures. I was told as I was leaving on a stretcher that Blake and Kenton, our cousins, that our uncle, that I mentioned to him that maybe we'd go fishing or something when I got back. I don't remember that. But then it seemed like I remember going past the Huntsville Park and could see the pine trees, like out of the ambulance. And why I have that memory, I don't know. And then after that, it must have been days before I woke up. And I think I was in the same room with the Jim. He was still in traction, or his stumps were, as I started coming around. And I don't remember, being told, I'm missing a leg or what, any of the gory details and everything that happened. One good thing that I think that happened out of the whole deal was getting rid of that old house. I don't know how we would have got out of there, but anyway, so that's my memories.
So cousin Ellen, she asked, and I did touch on it, but what caused the shell to go off? So Don had cut the warhead in half, the shell, and the rocket part of it, and then the other. But when all the people left the house, Don brought the shell into the house, and he laid it down horizontally on the floor. And after he played with it, Carmen I saw, but just before it went off, it was laying horizontally on the floor, and all of a sudden, like Orville said, I didn't hear a boom, but I saw just bright orange, just the brightest orange, like just a real beautiful sunset you might see. And but the professional said that coming from the cold into the warm, that it released the mechanism, and then it.
How big was it?
Anyway, I saw Kathy. Kathy, do you remember anything? Because you was.
I remember, well, I was 9 when that happened, and my younger sister Margaret. We were so angry that day because our mom and dad were going to Ogden, and they made us go. And Cheryl and Mary Jo got to stay behind. And I know how they had been there right before it happened, but I just remember. I mean, it was just so devastating. It was just so traumatic for everyone. And I remember that first night after the accident that Halvard and Elba Thompson was at our house, and Margaret and I were in bed by the kitchen, and we could hear him talking about how dire the situation was. And we just hugged each other and just cried and cried and cried because we loved you guys so much, and you were our friends, and it was like, this can't be going on. It just can't be happening. And then after, as you started to get better and was able to come home, and I was just always amazed with you guys too. I remember you, Jim, swimming at Pineview Plunge, and Orville too, and riding your bikes and learning to skate in your yard with your dad, and just lots of really good memories. And it's something that just stays with you forever. It does. And then the nights watching. Yeah, we did. Yeah, Orville taught us to ice skate on the backyard, and then my mom didn't want us to go to Pineview, but she would allow us to go with Mr. Peterson because he would go down and chop the ice and see how thick it was. And we used to skate at Pineview, but we learned from him, and skating with the little chairs from the school behind him. So, but yeah, I mean, the Peterson family is one of a kind, really.
Thank you.
How many here remembers Mrs. Anderson's role?
Mary's.
So Brother Lynn is here. He was in Chile at the time. Maybe any thoughts, Brother Lynn?
I've been in Chile since December of '62, and I was in a little town Quixote out from Santiago, Chile, and my companion got a call from the mission president saying that we needed to go into the mission home. And we had some families who were teaching. I said, well, let me stay here, you go, we'll switch companions. I was not interested in going. But he said, no, you got to come. Anyway, we get in the mission home, and President Palmer handed me a little tiny telegram on paper. It just said, 3 of your brothers have been seriously injured in an explosion at home. And I thought, whoa, how could explosion at home? There was no gas in the house. But a little while after this settled down, I thought, oh yeah. Anyway, the mission president said, call home. I tried calling home, and I tried for an hour and couldn't get through. I didn't know they'd already cut the telephone lines to the house. I finally tried Bishop Keith Jensen, got right through, and he was on his way down to the hospital. So he told me a little bit about what had happened. He says, you stay there, it's not going to do any good for you to come home and try and help. And letters will follow, and they did. Pictures and letters came, but going back to Quixote on the bus, I was looking out the window and thought, oh my gosh, that's the most terrible thing. I couldn't hardly imagine. It's a good thing I was in Chile and not home. I don't know how I would have handled it. I might have been right there with them. So a couple of things. I don't know where I got the idea that they were sawing through this when it went off and that it was on a chair.
That's what I thought too. I thought it was on the table.
Yeah, or table or chair.
This is new news.
Yeah, it was earlier in the day outside.
So according to another thing that I had heard, when the military did the investigation, that projectile was pointing straight up. So most of the blast went out of the roof, and it was the shrapnel in the shell that got your legs. It's like the Cokeville miracle. The guardian angels had put most of the blast up out of the roof. If it would have been horizontal.
Yeah, so Dad always thought that, there was an angel that came into the home and put the shell vertical, so it went out this way. And because in the house, he only found shrapnel, about 6 feet up? And the further you went down looking in cabinets and in the walls, the more there was, so. And Brother Don, did you say you wanted to say something else?
Yeah, I'll just tell you a little bit of my history. I first want to talk about Lyle's dad, Halver, the sheriff. As many times as I run away from home, and then Halver would come and haul me back. I'd think, why is he taking me back to Huntsville?
He did that to me too.
Yeah. But anyway, back to the Bazooka explosion. Yeah, Jim and I hiking up into Bennett behind the monastery and bringing that live round out of there, and nothing happened. I had friends come over and try to help me unscrew it, because the olive drab one was sealed. It wouldn't unscrew, but the blue ones, you could take them apart, make complete rounds out of them, because they were just dummy rounds. But anyway, so we had it in our house for probably a month. And my sister Faye's husband, Don, had been in the Air Force, and he'd come and seen those in our bedroom as room ornaments. And Don said, hey, he said, that olive drab colored round means something. He said, that could be a live round. And I'd never paid much heed to it, other than we couldn't unscrew it. I'd have kids in there get on it with me, and we'd try to open it up, crank it. But anyway, what Don told me bothered me, so I took it out behind the house, took a .22 rifle, and shot holes through the nose of it. Nothing happened. And in the nose of those, they're made hollow. So when they hit to explode, they blow out. They'll blow in the side of a tank and totally take out the wiring, everything, and gut a tank. Nothing could survive it. Yeah. But anyway, so the day that it blew up, Mom and Dad at a funeral, and I had, I don't know how many kids standing around me. Out behind the house, I had it laying in a sawhorse and a hacksaw, and cut half through that explosive. Sparked and sputtered. Nothing happened. And then later, Mom and Dad went to left for the funeral. I brought it into the kitchen, and it was warm in there from the fire in the wood stove. And taking little pieces of powder out of it, putting in the fire. And that's about what I was doing when it blew up. And I was the closest to it, and it blew up. If I'd had a gun to my head and commit suicide, it'd been about what happened to me, because I just
don't remember nothing other than lighting on my knees and looking up and seeing daylight as the roof come back on the house, and trying to stand, and I couldn't stand because both my knees were busted. And then something hit me in the head and knocked me off and knocked me back, and I'm laying with Orville. We're entangled with each other. Yeah. And the first memory I had opening my eyes after all that, and Frank Allen, the neighbor, looking through that front window as Orville and I lay there on the floor. And Jim, I don't know, he was somewhere in that room. And Frank Allen saying, "Oh my God," when he looked through that window. So as far as I remember, that was the first individual there after the explosion. Yeah. And from then I just remember the ride down Ogden Canyon with Jim. We were both in the same ambulance. Every turn in that canyon, I'd scream because my knees were so busted up and the pain was unbearable. Then I get to the hospital, and a lot of police who all were questioning me, trying to figure what we had, why it blew up, trying to put it as a World War II relic, come back from World War II. And I don't remember what I answered to them or told them, but anyway, pretty soon they gave me whatever they gave me to put me out. And the first thing I remember coming through was opening my eyes, and Craig was at in the Marines, but there at my bedside was my mom and Craig. And that was maybe two, three days after the explosion. And that's about all I remember.
I talked to Craig, and he was in Vietnam when this happened, right?
No, he didn't go to Nam. They kept him stateside.
Oh,
He would have
I
been in
won't tell the rest of the story.
He was still in,
He was going to leave the phone.
yeah, he was still in boot camp. Am I right? Camp Pendleton, I think, was.
Yeah.
So
That kind of saved him.
my one big dream I'd had all through my years was going in the military. And at that time, was just in the process of dropping out of high school and joining the Marine Corps. And that explosion put a stop to that.
I made it into the Air Force and spent a little time, and I just think it's ironic that twice a year on one of our exercises, I was their UXO guy, one of 3 UXO guys in the unit. So after they'd simulate a war, 3 of us would go out in our chemical warfare gear and look for bombs.
It's in your blood.
It's in my blood. I usually found them. I was pretty good at it.
So one other thing, as the years went on, I moved up to northern Washington, way up to the Canadian border. And the job they gave me in that mine was setting charges because I'd been blown up once.
What's your chances?
So they had me tamping and pounding the dynamite in the holes we'd drilled and setting those charges.
Did they call you lucky?
You know, probably so. So I was still monkeying with explosives even after that. So Don, when he cut it, he still had a big chunk of live explosive that he put in a metal can, and he ditched it in the little shed behind the house. And so Craig, coming home from the Marine Corps and just cleaning or going through things, he'd seen that can, he pulls it down. The minute he seen that green explosive with yellow writing, knew, and by that time the newspaper had said, "Oh, National Guard, that's not one of our shells, we didn't leave nothing live up there." And so I think Dad said, "Well, we got to call the EEO or the demolition experts, the demolition guys. They're supposed to come and get anything that we find." And I think Craig says, this is what blew up on them. You know, this is it. And Craig knew how dangerous that was. And so there's a picture, a newspaper picture, and maybe it's on the video with Dad and the government guy holding that, and it's just as unstable as what we had. And Craig, I think, said he was behind a tree or because he was going to take a picture of it.
Yeah, just a flash, any kind of static, anything can set them off. But that piece that they found in the shed had the writing, had the serial number. They were able to track it back to the right back to the National Guard unit.
I think I'd heard that Craig says, you better call Hal, or this is what blew up on him. Now, you know, rather that's true, you know, like, you know, you better let Hal or somebody know. Don't let the government guys just hide it to take it or something.
That seemed to around all those people, because all those kids had parts and pieces of them dummy shells at our houses, and he'd come around and gathered everything. Had a truckload of them. So one other thing pertaining to that round.
Real quick, they was chatting. 1 second.
Oh, sorry.
I remember saying that to the call house, make him aware. So that was a good transaction.
But anyway, the reserve units had used Huntsville for their maneuvers. And so Charlie Shoup, boys, Richard, Michael, and a bunch of us on an old tractor went up behind Chris's lodge in Huntsville. And up behind that lodge is where they had held their maneuvers that spring. And I think it was the same spring we found the bazooka shell, but they had a bunch of posts up there in the ground with TNT blocks wired to it with steel wires with the blasting caps and the TNT. We filled a whole big case and was on that tractor, and it was muddy coming off that divide, slipping and sliding. We had enough TNT to blow Huntsville off the map. Yeah. So Charlie Shoup, he had, when we had our accident, he turned all that, called the Hillfield or whoever, and they come up and took that stuff and got it out of there.
Newspaper with them find that they ditched it in the storm or something like that.
Down in the barn.
It looks like it's pulling it out.
So nowadays, if there's a tragic accident, trauma, you know, you got all kinds of help, you got all kinds of psychiatric help, you know, there's all kinds of help. But back in 1963, we didn't get any help, and I think we turned out okay.
We're here today.
Does anybody else got anything to say? Yes, Carmen.
So I was the oldest of the ones that was in the explosion, so I wanted to share. So the first night we were and bless thank God for letting us come. I remember sleeping in the living room on her floor, and I would keep waking up thinking I was coming out of a dream. And then when it would hit me, no, this is a reality, I would say, no. You know, this happens to other people, but not our family. And so I experienced going through that. But I'm not sure if we were at your home for one night or 2 nights. It didn't seem like very long. And then 3 nights. And then we went and lived with our grandparents, our grandma and Uncle Orvis over in the Peterson home. And so many nights, our parents would call and they would say, we're not coming home because we don't know if Jim's going to make it tonight. Next night, we don't know if we're going to come because we don't know if Orville's going to make it tonight. And this went on for quite a few nights. Maybe there'd be a couple nights they'd come in late, sleep a few hours, and be gone. So we were really without our parents, and they were at the hospital. But anyway, through it, we made it, and I don't know how, but I have a memory that hasn't come out through this, and I remember going into the hospital. It might have been the day after the second day when we got to go in to really see the reality. We got to see the three, and just they were all bandaged up and stuff, but I did experience, that really hit me. Okay, this really has happened. But I have a memory of Orville, and it seemed like he was unconscious for, it was more than hours. It seemed like for a few days. And I just remember we didn't know if you were going to come out of it.
I think Mom said my head, like going, just rocking my head back and forth for a few days or something.
I remember that, and I just haven't heard that come out. But we were just wondering if you were ever going, I just remember I had wondered if you were ever going to become conscious again. But that reality of going in the hospital and knowing they were all in critical condition, not knowing, you know, just not knowing if any of them were going to pull through it. And the miracle that all of you did, and how much you have just blessed all of us so much, your strength, your determination, such an example of when something happens, not to give up. And I love my family. I love all of my brothers, and just the example you are to all of us. I wanted to share that.
So a big part of the house start under construction. Like, wasn't that pretty quick within a month, the new house? Like how quickly the community, the neighbors, the donations?
I think it was longer than a month. We were at Grandma's for quite a while, a few months it seemed like, because a lot of that was donated help. So it took some time for that to happen.
So did they demolish the house completely and rebuild? Okay.
I went with our father on, so it happened on Saturday. Monday morning, I rode with Dad and went up to the house. And it was boarded up. When we went into the kitchen, everything was demolished. The planks on the floor, and just that reality that this is what had happened. The only thing that worked, I remember there was our phone still on the wall by the front door. I picked it up and I could still hear the phone worked. But looking around, everything was, whatever was still left in the home and hadn't been removed, was shattered.
And it was the day after.
So I do have a question. I think this is a big part of the story. I'd like some clarification. The team of doctors were up here in the valley?
No, there was a doctor at the polio clinic at the school that was on the scene, and then when we got to the hospital,
So those doctors at the hospital were trained with like MASH unit? I see.
The doctor at the school was only if a child was to have a reaction to the sugar cube, the polio vaccine, and a couple of nurses just to help hand them out. That's all it was.
Gotcha.
Otherwise, they wouldn't have been done.
Otherwise they wouldn't have even been there. They would have been sugar cube.
I think our mother had said that somebody had said the doctor, after he left the house, across the street there was a puddle or something, and he was, you know, trying to wash his hands. I'd heard that. I don't know if anybody else from Mom.
I think we have to hand it to Grandma Peterson and Uncle Arvis. They were so good to us. A lot of people were so good to us. video with us in the hospital when we were able to get out of a bed and that. And I'm pretty sure it was Aunt Mary, and I don't know if you were there or not, Ellen. I think you were there, but that one picture was Aunt Mary and Ellen and a few of the markers that was there that took the picture that you see in the video with us all kind of together with other family members.
And that was the only day that I was able to go to the hospital. Because of my age, I couldn't see him. But Dad said we had to see our brothers, and so they let us go.
Then I ended up in Paul came to the hospital for tonsils or something. He said we need brace wheelchairs, or he ends up being brother-in-law.
One other thing I can mention is,
A little bit louder, Lynn.
those of you that grew up in Huntsville remember that Dad had a special way of eating, his own diet. Mom went along with it.
Strict word of wisdom.
Strict word of wisdom. And in the Doctrine and Covenants, it says that those that keep the word of wisdom and keep the commandments and live the gospel, that their lives would be spared, that the guardian angel would pass them by as the children of Israel. And Dad was a firm believer that it was because he was doing his best to live the gospel and live the word of wisdom, the reason their lives were spared. And I believe that it's really with the intervention of our Heavenly Father. Otherwise, an explosion like that, they could have all just been killed right on the spot. So it strengthened my testimony. Yeah. But you want to share, love?